So what happened yesterday with oil has never happened before, and it will happen again, probably in the next couple of weeks. Oil is back up to $20 a barrel today, but yesterday it was trading for negative $30 a barrel. Negative $30. This time yesterday, it had already fallen, I think, 45% in its price. And that was at $12 a barrel. It fell 45%. By the end of the day, it had fallen 305%. So why? What happened? Well, we're at the end of the month, and something called oil futures come due. And you've heard for years about oil speculators. These are the people that can either drive the price of oil down or up. They speculate that at the end of the month, oil is going to be worth this amount. And they hope to be able to make money by selling that contract. They said oil's going to be at $20 a barrel. And that a month ago, that would have been crazy great. Now, today, with all of the oil, nobody wants oil. So you might have a contract where I can buy oil at $20 a barrel, but everybody's saying, I'm full. I don't have any place to put it. And so these speculators were then they're standing there holding that contract saying, wait, I don't actually have a place. I'm in a glass tower in New York City wearing a suit. I don't have a place to put oil. I just take the contract out and I'm supposed to sell it to one of you guys. And you guys are supposed to store it someplace. And all of the people standing around going, yeah, I don't have any place to store it. Now, this happened to West Texas Oil because it's landlocked and you have to take delivery in a place called Cushing, Oklahoma. Cushing, Oklahoma, that's where all of the pipelines run into. And so when the oil is pumped, it's pumped to Cushing, Oklahoma, and you take it from there. You have to store it there, and then you can fill up the trucks and, take it to the refineries. Well, there is no storage in Cushing, Oklahoma. Everything is full. As I've been telling you for a while, there's going to come a time where oil is in the negative range. Well, it happened yesterday. So we have so much oil that there is no place to put it anymore. And it's especially bad because this is landlocked oil. All of the pipelines that run from West Texas and all of the oil here in America goes to Oklahoma. And rerouting it to a port, I don't even know if you can. I don't know how that works. But this oil has to stop there. So there is no more room. So this means a couple of things. First of all, the oil speculators got crushed yesterday. And it makes me happy because he was standing out on the street going, okay, how about $5 a barrel? How about I just give you the oil? You won't take it from me. Okay, I pay you $5 a barrel. It got to $30. I will pay you $30 to take this oil from me. Okay? It wasn't the oil company that was having to pay. It was the speculator who had that contract for delivery. He had to cough up that money. So he had to cough up the money for all of that oil. And then finally somebody said, all right, at that price, I can find some place to store that oil. So they stored it, but it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So here's what this means. This collapse has been engineered by Russia and a little bit by Saudi Arabia, although Saudi Arabia is kind of on our side, at least I think, as much as they're on anybody's side. But they caused this by turning on oil production at 20% right before COVID hit. So they said, we're going to turn up oil production about 20%, and we're going to cause the price to go down. Russia was doing it to collapse us. Saudi Arabia said, oh, really? Well, let's see who can last longer, you or me. And so Saudi Arabia opened up the spigot all the way and said, we're going to pump and pump and pump at full bore. Let's see who could collapse and who can last, because both of those economies are oil economies. So the oil is what's paying for their government, their stipends, their Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all of that stuff. Both of these countries collapse if oil prices collapse. So they're playing a game of chicken. Well, we are caught up in it because we're also playing the game of chicken. Rick Perry was on just last week saying that we really need to stop producing so much oil. The reason why we can't is you just don't shut an industry down, as we're finding out with America. Because we've shut America down, because we're no longer flying, because we're no longer driving in our cars every day, because we're headed into the summer and we don't need heating oil, the need for oil is almost stopped. It's almost at zero. It's never happened before in the history of the world. So Texas is the only one, and I shouldn't say Texas, American oil companies, the ones that are drilling for oil and getting it out of shale and everything else, all this great technology that made us energy independent in the last year, all of that now is at risk because once you shut it down, it has lasting effects. You can't just turn the entire industry off and then come back to it. Do you remember when Barack Obama said that we're no longer going to drill in the Gulf of Mexico? If you remember that series of shows I did where I was explaining how drilling actually works in the water, those giant platforms are not owned by these companies. They are rented. And that drilling equipment is wildly expensive. And they're leased for decades. When Obama said we're not going to drill in the Gulf anymore, at least put a moratorium on it for, I think he said a year or 8 months, something like that, that made those leases lapse and expire. And those drilling rigs, and he knew exactly what he was doing, those drilling rigs were taken elsewhere, and someone else took them to drill elsewhere in the world and not America. We don't get those back. It's not like they're just short-term lease. That's like 20 years that those will be there. And you don't just rebuild an oil platform. Same now with the Texas and the American oil industry on land. You don't just shut it down and then reopen. 5 million people will lose their jobs. President Trump now is faced with, do I bail out? Can you imagine this with Ocasio-Cortez and the left? Do I bail out the oil market in America? Do I just pay for it to stay open, even though we don't have any place to put the oil? This is a strategic necessity. We cannot lose our oil industry. Now, this is usually the time that wars are started because Russia is faltering because there's no demand for oil. They have to have it or they will collapse. And you're not playing around with a sane guy. You're playing around with Vladimir Putin, who will kill anyone just so he survives, let alone Russia. He is on the verge of collapse. Saudi Arabia, it's why they're beheading so many people. It's why they're getting so nasty. It's why they've gone around and kidnapped all of the royal princesses and princes and all of the royal family because they need the money. They're taking these people and putting them in jail and saying that, well, they were doing fraud so they can seize all of that wealth. Because Saudi Arabia is only held together by the money they give the people. Because it's a little like Alaska. You get a check from Alaska for all of the oil that is drilled. The same in Saudi Arabia, except it pays for your whole lifestyle. Nobody in Saudi Arabia, no Saudis actually work. They're all basically playboys because everybody gets a share of the oil. So what is Donald Trump going to do? The first thing I would recommend is, I know this is going to make a very small dent, but get in your car today and drive. Get in your car and just go take a long drive. Get in your car. If you haven't filled it up, go fill it up. We've got to move some of this oil. We've got to start consuming oil. One of the reasons why we have to go back online. We have to use this oil. Otherwise, our Navy and our airplanes, they can't fly. And if we go to war ever, we cannot be beholden to anyone else on oil. That's why Germany lost. They lost because they just couldn't handle the oil consumption. They had to have oil to run everything and to make giant refineries to be able to have petrol so they could fly and sail. That's what we were doing in Saudi Arabia, and that's what they were doing in Saudi Arabia and Egypt as well. They needed the oil of the Middle East. Now, this goes to something else. Our ethanol industry, a lot of byproducts come from ethanol. Well, we're not making ethanol. So now corn futures are down about 20% because we use so much corn in ethanol. So now our corn farmers are going to be really hurting, and they're not going to be planting as much corn. What does that mean? What does that mean for all of the byproducts from ethanol? This is the beginning of something called deflation, and it's something that Americans have never seen, and it will seem like a good thing at first. Deflation is what's happening right now at your gas station. Here in Texas, you can buy a gallon of gas for $1.09. That's pretty great. Everybody's like, whoa, that's great. I think in California, it's still like $16 a gallon. The reason why? You can now see what your state charges in tax. Again, in Texas, it's $1.09. What are you paying? Because everything over that, almost everything over that, is taxes. So I know in Connecticut, it's over $3 a gallon still. That's your state robbing you blind every time you go to the gas station. What is it in California? That's your state robbing you blind every time you go to the gas station. Yeah, they've made you hate the big oil industry, but it's not oil. It's the big government industry that is really raping you at the gas pump. So we're having deflation now, and it seems like it's a good thing, but it's not as it continues. Because as this continues, more and more things will lose demand. For instance, the big thing that will affect you is a house. You won't be able to sell your house because your house will be worth 50% less. When your house is worth 50% less, can the bank repossess? I don't even know. When your house is not worth what you paid for it and you owe a lot of money, you better not miss a single payment, and you can't get out of it. So everybody else around you, if they don't own a house, they can go and buy a house at 50% less, but you can't because you'll have to cough up all of that money when you try to sell it. There's plenty of money, but nothing our money can buy. That's a line from Rudyard Kipling. And that poem has become more and more accurate every single day.